Yeah, I moved on from there to a couple other desktop snaps. One was GNOME Twitch, which is now defunct. And I was regularly improving my knowledge of the desktop. It was very much a trial by fire. There's a lot to learn there. I've also packaged several games, including OpenRA, OpenTTD, that's Transport Tycoon. RA is Command & Conquer Red Alert, and the original Command & Conquer. Super Tux Car, everyone's favourite. Micropolis I picked up from the One Laptop Per Child project and recompiled that. So even if the source doesn't get updated to bring it up to any new libraries that are included, it should carry on working in the Snap. And many, many more. So, am I fully committed, or was I then? Yeah, pretty much. After the simple desktop snaps, I moved on to a bit of a bigger challenge in the GNU Imp, the image manipulation program. That app is a monster. You don't want to look at it. There's many dependencies, and they all need to mesh just right. The GNU image manipulation program project, they have several dependencies that they also wrote and maintained, such as Gegel and Babel. And they need to be specific versions for each release of the GNU Imp. At the time, and still now, it's GTK2. They are working to move it to GTK3, and I've got a preview snap based on their beta releases, or maybe alpha, I can't remember which. GTK2 was already legacy when I started packaging this, and it's even more so now. And there were, and I don't think there are still, many examples in the Snapcraft community of packaging a GTK2 app. Yeah, I learned an awful lot. And I'm still the principal maintainer of the GNU Imp via the Snapcrafters project. So how many snaps have I got? Well, there's my Snapcraft repositories. I've got 125, is it? Yes. They're not all snaps, but most of them are. And they're not all published on the store at the moment, but that's everything that I've been working on, experimenting with. And yeah, there's a lot there. So Snapstats is a website I wrote, I think 2, maybe 3 years ago. It scrapes the Snap Store, the API, and catalogs every snap that it can find publicly. So it doesn't know about private snaps, unfortunately, and it doesn't know how many installs you get. But it does catalog all the metadata that you publish about snaps. And this was an attempt at getting a third-party repository of knowledge about the Snap Store. And I particularly wanted to expose more metrics, such as how many snaps are targeting each architecture, how many for each base, and things like that. Unfortunately, the Snap Store's been a bit flaky lately. Since February, you can see the chart there. Went a bit wonky.
So are you actually scraping the web interface of the store, or have you tried doing like snap downloads of it?
I'm doing it via the HTTP API.
Because you can fetch all the YAMLs directly from the store. Have you tried doing that?
I haven't done that, no.
I don't know if the store team likes this doing that. I have a script where I do that periodically because I like to be able to go back and find how many snaps are plugging various content interfaces that we utilize, so I can get a better sampling of what to test, because we don't have a notion of reverse dependencies, even though we do have these things. So if I update like the GNOME 328 content snaps, like who's still using that? You know, and I can fetch that. So I'll give you a little bit of a snippet of what I'm doing.
Okay, so I think I'll repeat that for the recording because I didn't pass out the mic.
Okay.
So Ken, desktop team lead, suggests downloading the YAMLs directly off the store, and he queries about whether the store is willing to allow that.
Documented API.
Yes, it is a documented API, yes. So
You might want to update your certificate on your website sometime soon.
my own certificate,
Yeah.
oh, has it not updated? I logged in just now, actually, to get those screenshots.
Complaining. What's the website called?
Snapstats.org.
Snapstats.
Snapstats. snapstats.org.
Looks fine for me.
Yeah, Snapstat.
There's me, I made this.
Ah, no, there's an S on the end. So Snapcraft Summits. My activities in the community came to the attention of Alan Pope primarily, and then subsequently Martin Wimpress, who were on the Snapcraft advocacy team at the time, and they invited me to my first summit in 2018 in Seattle. I was the only community representative there, and what we were doing was asking companies who have products and any projects in the open source community who are likely to want to snap their apps or that we would like to see in the Snap store, and we help them build snaps. So we spent a week each time. I've been to 3 now. We spent a week each time just hardcore hacking, and out of that we got several apps launched while we were on site, including Spotify. And that was a big win, I think.
Nice.
Yes, I mentioned to Alan before the first summit that I attended that I was working on PowerShell Core. And so Alan organised for Travis Plunk from the Microsoft PowerShell team to come along. And during that week, we got PowerShell packaged, running, and we fixed several bugs that were impacting the ability to run in a snap. Specifically, the squashfs image was preventing users from opting out of telemetry because it required a file to be created alongside its binary. So I took inspiration from the .NET Core team. I took some of their code, rewrote it for PowerShell, and I now have that commit added to the PowerShell repository. So I'm a contributor to PowerShell through this. So am I a trusted expert? I don't know. But I can say that Canonical employees regularly request my expertise, including Ken, the lead of the Snapcraft team, via his desktop team hat as well. I've been on Ubuntu, as I mentioned, several times on the website, featured for my Snapcraft knowledge. And I'm a star developer on the store. I think I may have been the first star developer on the store. I'm not sure about that, though. I think there are others now. While Alan and Martin were still working at Canonical, they started the Snapcrafters project, and I was the inaugural member. I've since become a core member of a much wider Snapcrafters community. And I'm told that I'm well known and trusted within the community, so take that what you will. So what else have I contributed? Well, what about Snapcraft extensions? Let's find out about these. In the past, there were cloud parts. They were kind of magic and limited. So when you wanted to use a cloud part, you just specified that you wanted your part to work after it, and that's it. By doing that, the cloud part would include its own code via Snapcraft and build any dependencies that it is supposed to provide. They were authourable by anybody, and we published a list on the wiki, which wasn't really very friendly. And due to the implementation, it's my opinion that they weren't scalable. So now we've got Snapcraft extensions. These are similar to Cloud Parts. They are natively supported by Snapcraft. They're a bit more complex in their capabilities, but simpler in the way that you use them. They're shipped as part of Snapcraft. So if you want to add or amend an extension, you need to submit a PR. And sometimes they take a long time to get to the public release.
Which is a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
When we end up running set on our extensions at some point.
And scalability, has it really been proven? I don't think so. And so far, only desktop-related and Flutter extensions, to my knowledge, exist. Maybe there's a ROS one, I don't know. If there isn't, there's one in the works, I believe. So I want to replace them. Why? They're barely taken off yet, have they? So they just work. So why reinvent something new? Well, they ship within Snapcraft itself. The lead time to availability is long. And PR approval is not guaranteed. And you must sign the contributor license agreement, and some people may not want to. So my idea, at their heart, Snapcraft extensions just augment the Snapcraft YAML. So why don't we do that a different way? So I wrote a while back an app called SC.JSonnet. It uses the JSonnet syntax, which is an augmentation of JSON. So what you do, instead of writing your Snapcraft YAML in YAML, you write it in JSonnet. And when you have a JSonnet file, you create your YAML file just by running a simple command before you then build your app. That's what a simple JSonnet looks like. So the import at the top, that's not really necessary, but I've done that just to provide an extension point if I need to augment the way that it sets up the file before you amend it. So the Snapcraft variable there is used to set up an initial set of parameters that ensures that any defaults are set before you override them. And as you can see, it looks very similar to JSON. So if you want to add a third-party app extension that anyone can write, you just import it and then add it on the end. And that's it. So that will enable my ALSA override. That's all you need to do. You don't need to copy and paste anything in. And you can also use specific versions of ALSA with it. So it will then compile instead of using the ALSA from the repository. So if you have a dependency on a specific version of ALSA, then that's your answer. There's documentation on read the docs. And I've written two libraries, the ALSA library, as I mentioned, and the utils library, which is several extensions that include boilerplate code that like the cleanup part. So if you want to use the cleanup part, instead of copy pasting it into your YAML, you just add it on the end as cleanup. So any more? Snapcraft CI/CD pipelines. There's going to be more about this tomorrow in my other talk, one of my other talks. So I developed a pipeline for both GitHub Actions and GitLab CI. It should work if you write the pipeline yourself in other CI/CD implementations, provided that your CI/CD can run privileged Docker containers. So I wrote a new container image to package this, particularly because the one provided in the Snapcore namespace on Docker Hub, that hasn't been updated for a long time. So in effect, it's abandoned. And also, it wasn't fully featured. For example, build snaps don't work. As I say, see my other talk for full details. So let's wrap up. One more thing. My skills are for sale. So I provide contracting services to anyone creating snaps. I've already been employed by a couple of organisations. I won't say several because it hasn't been many. And you can contact me via my website, snapcraft.ninja. So introduce your project, indicate whether you've got your own CI/CD, and we'll get chatting. Acknowledgements, there's a lot there. So Wimpy, Popey, obviously, they've got me heavily involved. They're alumni of Canonical, and Igor as well on the advocacy team. They've all recognised my capabilities and enthusiasm. And they invited me to the Snapcraft Summits, which I'm immensely grateful for. And they encouraged me to get deeper into the community, such as getting my Ubuntu membership and then pushing in further to become an Ubuntu membership board delegate. There's also the desktop team. Ken and Heather are here. The Snapcraft team, is anyone here from Snapcraft? The Snapd team, obviously. They're all at Canonical. They've been receptive to my contributions, and they've always encouraged me to keep going. Sarah Dickinson, formerly head of Canonical PR, for putting me on the Ubuntu blog. Heather, who's here, thank you. And Monica, who has since left Canonical, she was community manager. They've both been excellent friends, constant encouragement and support, and helping me through applying for jobs. So thank you very much. Speaking of jobs, at the bottom there, I'm currently looking. So if you want to employ me, you can find me at Snapcraft Ninja, as I mentioned. I'm also on the Ubuntu Discourse and Snapcraft forum as Diddle Dani. There's my Diddle Snaps GitHub repositories, which I provided a screenshot of. And Ubuntu accomplishments I mentioned yesterday. If you want to contribute, that would be brilliant. I'm Twitter, Diddle Dani, but I'm trying to move over to Mastodon, so there's my Mastodon as well at mastodon.lol. And that's it, so let's go to questions. So does anyone have a question? Brian.
Can I ask a painfully stupid question?
Yes, of course you can. I don't know which way that goes.
It's going to be immortalized.
Yeah.
So my question is this. I'm wanting to build a snap of the landscape server, quick start, and two of the big components in it obviously are Postgres and RabbitMQ. I mean, do I have to manually set everything up for Postgres and RabbitMQ, or is there a way I can include another snap in a snap, or some sort of macro, or?
So they both listen on the network, don't they? Mm-hmm. So you could rely on the user installing the two separately, but that's complicated and not really a viable option. Really, you need to bundle it and set it up. So you should be looking at existing implementations if you can find them. Quite often, for things like databases, there's a setup script included in the snap, so that would be very valuable to replicate in your own snap of landscape. So,
okay, I'll take a look at the Nextcloud one. That probably will give me some ideas.
Yeah, if you're expecting to run it on a system that may include Postgres or RabbitMQ as a user-installed snap or via a different snap, then you'd probably be best off by choosing a random port.
Okay.
To prevent binding conflicts. It would be nice if there was a network namespace involved in snaps, but that's a difficult issue.
The host system services are only listening on local domain, Unix local domain sockets. You probably won't be able to see them from your snap.
If it's Unix domain sockets, you won't be able to see them if they're outside the snap or in a different snap, unless the other snaps provide an interface. where it should be a content interface to expose that.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
more questions? Pass the mic.
So I guess I'm still trying to formulate my question, but have you found it particularly hard to get PRs through on the Snapcraft extensions front? It seems like kind of going a orthogonal path
It is an orthogonal path, yes.
is just makes it harder. Like, also, how many people really need to work on the extensions? Not that many.
Yes, but there is the opportunity to include capabilities that aren't really worth having a proper extension for. At the moment, we're focusing our extensions on large blocks of code, such as desktop enablement, whereas my JSONnet-based extensions are much more fine-grained and much more configurable. For example, the AUSA part that I showed there, it's the same part that you can use to bring in AUSA from the deb repository or compile your own, and you only need that plus AUSA at the end.
But one of the nice things about YAML is that you don't have the all the curly braces everywhere.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Others anti-curly brace.
I'm always missing one, you know?
If you can find a different markup language, I'm happy to explore it.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like, we are kind of focusing on larger things, but we don't have to. And I think, you know, with the gaming, well, I guess Mesa's kind of large as well, but there's a lot of, like, flexibility. And it seems to me that it might be better to try and focus the efforts in the one place.
Mm-hmm.
But I also recognize that you are an expert and you've helped me out lots. So yeah, I guess I wondered, like, what brought you to, like, okay, well, I'm just going to go in this direction then.
So I wrote JSONnet before extensions came along. So while the cloud parts were still a thing, and they were much more limited in their capabilities.
Cloud parts was a bad.
Yeah. So one of the great things about the JSONnet language is that it isn't just a markup language. There is a coding capability in there. So, for example, the AUSA part, I purposely, if you compile your own AUSA via it, it purposely goes through every single other part that you include and makes sure it strips out any dependencies on AUSA that you've put in yourself.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe we could use it to inform the extension's evolution rather than replace it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions? James, will you pass that back?
One of the things we're trying to do more and more of now is a little bit more of a hybrid kind of approach with the extensions. We're moving like the helper scripts that the extensions were providing into the content snap. So they can be more tightly coupled there. And I think that solves a number of issues. I like the idea of the extension code itself being very tightly versioned with Snapcraft, the version that built it. So you can go back later and see what it would have been doing.
Yes.
That was one of the big problems with cloud parts is at any given time when you happen to build it, what did that look like?
Yes.
You know, it was very unpredictable. So I like the predictability of the extension system. It was a little bit problematic with the scripts, like if the content snap made changes or something, you had to be really careful. Now you can actually just make sure your script follows any changes that the content snaps provide. I'm not sure, Jonathan, if the KDE snaps are doing something similar. Are you providing your launch scripts in the content snap, or are you relying on the extension still? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So relating that to JSONnet, you can see I'm pulling in a GitHub URL, and that can be versioned explicitly to a commit. So you have got that capability here.
And you can do it by tags rather than.
Yes, you can do it by tags. By branch won't be as predictable because that can change over time, whereas a tag shouldn't, but it can. A direct commit hash, that's the safest way. There I've just used master because that's easy. And the output of that, it is a standard Snapcraft YAML. So if you commit that, that gives you exactly what your build is. And if you use the correct environment variables when you're building, I believe it copies the Snapcraft YAML into the snap. Any more questions? No? Okay, we're finishing early then.
Thanks.
About 20 minutes early. Thank you.